Good afternoon, cabbies and cabettes. My name is Sean Paul Down. You are listening to London Taxi Radio. I am delighted to say that I am joined by not just a friend of mine, but a great friend of the taxi trade and a great ambassador for the taxi trade as well. And more than that, she just so happens to be the Vice President of the Taxi Charity for Military Veterans. I am, of course, talking about the wonderful Frances Wyhowska. Hello, Frances. How are you?
Hi, Sean. I'm very well, thanks. Thank you.
Now, the last time I saw you, we was at a party.
We were, yes. My party.
Yeah. And I've got to say, this wasn't just any party, listeners. This was a fantastic soiree that happened to be at the Lansdowne Club, of all places.
Yes.
And it was hosted by Frances herself. It was brilliant, wasn't it? Absolutely brilliant.
It was fun. It was at the end of January, and I like giving parties, and I decided that people was going to be so exhausted after being shut away. I decided I'd like to have a party with as many people as I could get as possible. And a few days before, some rather mouldy person that I know, which was on the guest list, rang up and said, "Oh, I presume you're going to cancel." And I said, "Well, no, I'm not, And I thought, and they said, "Well, we think it's going to be very dangerous, so we won't come." And I thought, hooray!
Oh, really? No, I think it's brilliant because, like you said, I think we had just limped to the end of COVID restrictions, hadn't we? And I think people they were needing to get out, and they needed a party. So for that reason alone, it was brilliant, and there were some fantastic people there. I think Parker had a skinful. And I think his cheeky Cockney cabbie comes out of him, doesn't he, when he's had a drink or two?
Well, I don't think I can malign someone who's such a loyal friend, But what was very nice was that people came from such a great distance, because people came from as far as Norfolk, Dorset, Somerset, and I think that showed, rather than it being my party, I think it showed there was just an appetite for a party.
No, it was brilliant. So the only question I've got for you today is, when is the next one?
I'll have to do a bit of saving and see what's under the mattress.
Having said that, honourable mention should go to taxi driver extraordinaire Brian Heffernan, because he's just been appointed the chair of the taxi charity, hasn't he?
Yes, he has, yes. And he's just started. I think he took his first meeting the other day. I mean, you have to hand it to Brian, because he volunteers so loyally for that charity. He really does. I mean, some of the time there are kind of quite annoying little trips that have to be done in that they're sort of in the middle of the day. They're going to interfere with the way a cab driver's going to be earning, etc., etc. And 9 times out of 10 for those, Brian will stick his hand up and do it, which is really, really amazing. And he got the ultimate reward in a sense the other day, because the Victoria Cross and George Cross Association contacted the charity after, very sadly, the demise of Her Majesty. And of course all the VC and GC holders were invited to her funeral. And it was just a tiny bit of running around, not very far. But Brian did it, and another very nice driver on the committee, Simon Hawes, who works the airport. And they had the privilege of taking VC and GC holders from A to B. And then I had the fun of going to meet them. They were invited to a lunch in Tite Street, and I went and joined Brian up there and met 8 or 10.
Oh, right.
And that was something. I think Brian and Simon and a couple of other chaps that did it were, breathless with the pleasure of doing that. So,
good luck to Brian, because it's well deserved. Now, we have been in lockdown, and I think because everything was put on hold, I think there's a misconception out there by some people that maybe what the charity was doing was put on hold as well, and that's not true, is it? Because during lockdown the charity has been busy, and it's been extremely busy since lockdown restrictions ended. So can you just tell us a little bit about what the charity has been up to?
Well, during lockdown, of course, we weren't able to see people much face to face, but the charity kept in touch with the veterans, really organised primarily by a colleague of mine on the charity, Dick Goodwin, made sure that people were sent cards. So a lot of the veterans, some of whom would have been very isolated, were sent cards for relevant anniversaries like VE Day or Victory in Japan. Valentine's Day, they got little things of sweets. And drivers would volunteer and drop them round so that they were seeing someone, a different person from perhaps whoever they were locked away with. And I think it was partly how we'd how we dealt with the whole COVID thing. That was one of the contributory factors to us getting the Queen's Award for voluntary service.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I know it sounds self-explanatory, but what does it entail, the Queen's Award?
Well, it is the equivalent of an MBE for charities, and it is especially for volunteering, and it is an award that is it has to be okayed as then by the Queen. So in that sense, it's very special. We were nominated for it, and then you go through quite a major procedure of filling in forms, explaining what you do, why you do it, how you benefit people, blah, 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 all that sort of thing. And I think we did put together a very good application because some of our veterans spoke and said how valuable the charity had been for them, and some of the drivers spoke, and we got it, and it's an award that stays for life.
Yeah, no, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Now, 2022 is rapidly coming to an end, and I am aware that 2023 is specifically special to the charity.
Yes, it's going to be the 75th anniversary of the charity, so it's extraordinary to think that next year, it will be the anniversary when 3 cab drivers got together in a pub in Fulham and decided to create this charity. And the way it's gone from strength to strength, I think they would be boggled by what the charity is now able to do with the trips overseas, the sheer numbers of people that we pick up. Of course, I know I've spoken before that the word veteran is one of those words that gives people an image of an ancient person, probably a Chelsea pensioner, festooned with medals. But veteran can be somebody of 22.
Yeah.
And I'm very concerned that we really stress this because there are all sorts of problems lying in wait for our veterans community. I think the withdrawal from Afghanistan will have a long-term knock-on effect for mental issues further along the line. I think we're going to see people with PTSD later suddenly thinking, why did I go to Afghanistan? What did it? I saw friends killed and so on and so forth.
And although PTSD was talked about in the past, it was never they never projected such significance on it back then, did they, as they do now? They see it now as being a real problem for people coming back from, say, places like Afghanistan.
Well, I think the reason it's so difficult to understand for your regular civilian is because it can hit much later. So you come back, you get back, you're doing your job, you're transitioning out of the military into civilian life. You've got all sorts of issues to deal with, housing, finding a different job, getting your pension and so on. And then maybe 5, 6, 7 years later, maybe 20 years later, something will trigger and suddenly somebody is completely blown away, literally sometimes. And suicides, I think, one of the things one needs to understand is that there have been more suicides amongst Falklands veterans since the Falklands than our army who actually died in the Falklands.
I mean, that's quite incredible, really. I mean, nobody seems to know that.
It's a terrible statistic. Anyway, so back to the 75th anniversary. We have got a number of things that we're planning. But of course, and I am going to talk about money. I know you said I wasn't supposed to talk about it yet, but I'll just slip it in for the moment and then we can come back to it. One of the issues the charity has is that because of the lockdown, we weren't able to do any collections, which means that our annual income of between 85 and 100,000, which we were getting from the station collections, has not occurred now for 2 or 3 years.
Oh, that's an incredible dip.
It's a terrible dip. So we are really targeting everyone we can think of. I mean, obviously we hope to get grants from places like the Royal Naval and Royal Marines charity. Other military charities do help, and substantially as well. But in order to try to do as many things as possible for the 75th, you know, we are obviously going to need money. And I think it's very important that the taxi trade should be so proud of this 75th anniversary.
Yes, yeah.
You know, the longevity of the cab trade is something that we talk about all the time. You know, it's been going for hundreds of years and so on and so forth. But to be running a voluntary charity in the way that it is, with people giving up time and income.
Yeah.
You know, yes, the charity pays expenses, of course, because you know you must. But it's the time factor, and even at times when earnings have been dipping, we're still never short of volunteer drivers.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, you know, the charity, the drivers themselves should be patting themselves on the back, and we are getting new drivers as well. We're getting people coming forward and saying they'd like to drive.
Yeah.
You know, it's incredibly rewarding, I think, for me.
But also, I mean, I'll go on record as saying that the taxi charity is a fantastic flagship for our industry. And I just think if people were I know times are hard, but if people were thinking about contributing, then it's self-evidential the work that the taxi charity does. You only have to go onto their website, you only have to go onto the Facebook or Twitter or the social media, and you can see the good work that they do. And I think, I mean, I only donate £5 a month, but if 10,000 drivers were to donate £5 a month, then that would generate such a lot of support for the charity and the work that they do, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. I mean, what we're going to do is we're going to push with the 75 issue. So we had, a friend of mine had this brilliant idea and suggested that we asked for £7.50 from drivers. And I'm going to have to look at my little crib sheet because I always get in a muddle here. £75 from other support services such as garages and so on.
Yeah.
£750 from apps and trade orgs, and large cab-related businesses. We will be targeting TfL. We will ask for some money from the LEVC, and then maybe a company like the LEVC would actually like to go one step further and give us £7,500. And it can be multiples, so you know somebody doesn't have to give us £75. They could maybe give us £150 if they wanted to, and of course anything less is more than welcome. But I've sort of been running with this little plan for a few weeks, and we've got some very good starters, and I can announce this now because I'm very excited and very grateful. Cabvision will be sending a cheque on Monday for £3,000.
Oh, brilliant!
Which is absolutely
Cabvision being one of the businesses in the trade that are very good for the trade and always supports trade initiatives as well.
Yes, and you know I'm really grateful to Lee for that, and even more thrilling. And that's not in any way to belittle Cabvision, but Ubiquitous are in January going to be giving us £7,500, which is brilliant. One of the firms of accountants, I think, has already promised £750, but I'm not going to say who it is because they need to confirm it. And I've been in touch. I've so far haven't really been in touch with all the orgs, but I've written to the LTDA, and I had a nice letter back from Steve McNamara saying that the decision to give us some money has to be referred to a committee.
Oh, really?
So I'm waiting to hear from them, and quite hopeful on that count. And there we go. So and rather jolly, the cab driver who brought me up here to talk to you, Sean, has donated his fare to get us started.
All right.
So you know,
good on him.
Yeah, good on him.
We don't know his name, do we?
Yeah, we do. He's called Danny O'Sullivan.
Danny O'Sullivan,
yes,
of course.
And he's
Danny
also
O'Sullivan.
a fireman.
Yeah.
And he's a very nice chap. Came to my mother's funeral. You know, good friend.
Yeah.
So I'm thank you, Danny. And yeah, so we're pushing ahead. So please have the idea: 75, £7.50, 750, 7,500. 75,000 if somebody wants to.
Yeah. So as we're on the subject of trying to generate some support, financial support for the charity, you're going to be at the airport, aren't you?
Yes, indeed. Next Friday, there will be a collection for the 75th anniversary for the charity at the airport, and I will be wearing thousands of layers because apparently it's absolutely freezing there, and I'll be there with Brian Heffernan will be there, also from the committee Simon Hawes, who works the airport, really nice chap, Vicky Calvi and I will be there, and this will be my first venture into the feeder park.
Oh right, okay. Well, that'll be an experience.
Well,
you're looking forward to that.
Well, I am looking
things to look forward to.
I am looking forward to it. Yes.
No, brilliant. Now, looking ahead, also 2024 is a big year, isn't it? Because there's the anniversary of D-Day. I think it's the 80th anniversary of D-Day, isn't it?
Yes.
And I'm sure the taxi charity will want to get involved in some way with that. Do you have any plans that far ahead?
Well, obviously it will depend. We would love to take any surviving veterans back for D-Day. I think one of the other things we're going to be looking at as well, because clearly the World War II veterans are disappearing at a rate of knots now, but it doesn't have to be just them, and I don't mean that to belittle them, but some of them will have sons or daughters who are also veterans, who would probably like to go and represent them. And those who've lost a limb, those who may have mental issues, we are there for veterans. Things for next year, one of the places I must thank, where I gave a talk the other day, is the London Ex-Boxers Association, which I can see you obviously thought, felt confident that I would be involved with them.
No, I remember it clearly though.
Well, we did that boxing match ages ago.
The charity event.
Yes.
Yeah. I think half of them haven't recovered from that.
I'm not sure I have. But they very kindly said that the charity can take a couple of tables at their annual lunch, which would be a good thing to invite a mix of veterans to. I've got the possibility for a more mixed group of veterans of maybe doing a fishing day on some very nice lakes near Oxford, which are wheelchair accessible. A friend of mine who owns a clay pigeon shoot in Hertfordshire has said that they will give us a special rate to go and do clay pigeon shooting there, and that would be a nice thing for some cab drivers might like to sign up for. We'll pay to take some veterans and maybe sort of make a day of it. I don't know, I'll have to see exactly how that works. And we're hoping to do a flying day. We're hoping to do something jolly, a really jolly party for VE Day, but obviously it's all going to depend on what comes in, and we'll see.
So again, if people want to get involved with the charity, how do they get in touch?
Well, the quickest way, of course, is through the website, which is www.taxicharity.org. That's the best way. And then all the links are there. If they want to donate, that's there. If you want to drive, there's something you can fill in. And in terms of veterans getting in touch with us, that tends to happen more through word of mouth. But for example, if there's a cab driver who knows someone in his street or in his area who he knows is lost an arm or lost a leg and has a fairly lonely time, who thinks might benefit from meeting some other people and just having a chat and going on a little outing or a day trip or something, let us know, and when something suitable comes up, then they can be added to the list.
Well, it's really interesting because somebody said to me the other day, was the taxi charity for military veterans quite a new charity? But it did change its name, didn't it? Because it was the Taxi Drivers Benevolent Association for the War Disabled.
It was something like a London Taxi Benevolent Fund for War Disabled.
Quite a convoluted title, so it was just about updating the title really to be more inclusive. So no, it's not. It is 75 years old.
It is 75
next
years
year.
old. Nothing new about it. Just new about what we dare to do and try to do.
I think it's also something to look forward to as well. And I think, like I said, I cannot think of a better flagship for our trade to support. And so if we could all get behind it, then it all helps, doesn't it? Especially that we've come out of lockdown where you was restricted to what you could do to generate an income.
I think very much so, and we are a good flagship for the charity. I mean, when we were in Holland just recently with some veterans, we went first to the British ambassador to the Netherlands residence for a reception there.
Well, it's really heartening as well to see reports from Holland, because in the way that the veterans get treated compared to here.
Well, I think that there are quite complicated reasons for that. I mean, first of all, Holland's much smaller; they've got many fewer veterans. But also, the Netherlands, they were occupied. We never have been. So the people that come out to welcome our veterans are the sons and daughters and grandchildren of people who went through the Nazi occupation. And that's why, I mean, it's taught in all the schools. The children adopt a gravestone and put flowers on it at the appropriate time of year. I think if you've been occupied, the story really continues to have a resonance. And I think over here we're slightly odd about these things, because if you don't know your history and be proud of some of your history, I don't see how you can ever go forward. So I don't think it's not a question of dwelling. I think it's a question of realising what people are prepared to do for their country.
It's a shame as well, isn't it? Because a lot of the stories that you hear directly will be handed down stories very soon. And there's nothing wrong with that, but they're not direct experiences, and there's something quite sad about that as well.
There is, but life goes on in similar ways, because we work with another charity called Waterloo Uncovered.
Oh yeah.
And they take veterans, particularly people who've it's particularly effective, I think, for people who have got some form of PTSD. They do this official, proper archaeological dig on the site of the Battle of Waterloo, and it's you get proper archaeologists from several countries are there. This is a two week thing for them, but they have also expanded this, and they've done some archaeological checks into the Falklands. So it's a slightly different process. You're not going to dig up a musket ball and find the skeleton of a horse. But they have examined great areas where there were particular battles, and they found things like a boot in a small hole, and it maps out. This is very recent history, and it's being chaired by a professor of archaeology at Oxford, and that's how you continue this the knowing your past, and that is a more hand-to-mouth experience, because those people are alive, or an awful lot of them. So
brilliant. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I'm thirsty now. I've talked so much.
We'll better go and get a drink. But look, don't take my word for it, listeners. Go onto all the social media, go onto the website, look at everything that they do, because it is absolutely fantastic. And not only in the midst of the lockdown was you awarded the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service, but prior to that you've been awarded the National Lottery Award for Best Voluntary and Charity Group, haven't you? So you don't have to take our word for it. Their work is self-evident. So if you do want to get involved, I'll put all the details out there as well. So brilliant. Thanks for coming on, Frances. And now back to serious questions. When's the next party? No.
I'll go and have a look at my checkbook stubs.
It's a costly place that Lansdowne Club. All right, thank you, Frances. Great to see you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
And thank you, Cab Trade. Thank you, drivers.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I thought you might say that.
London Taxi Radio, the cabby's choice.